Hey everybody, it's Safi and Marco Dish Out on Movies, the only movie review show on YouTube to review movies in terms of food. It's just Marco here once again, and I am here today to review The Old Man Season 2, Episodes 1 and 2. Sorry. I know I am a little bit late reviewing this, and also I apologize for my voice sounding coarse. Yesterday, I was filming a sequence for the movie, and I had to do a voice, and it just was very straining. There was one part where I had to do it for 13 whole minutes, which I know isn't a lot compared to what they do in Hollywood, with all the time that they waste doing take after take after take, but yeah. So, in general, I want to go over how I felt about Season 1 in case people are watching this and they haven't seen my review of Season 1. In general, I felt like Season 1 was a mixed bag. I enjoyed watching the show, kind of. It was very grating at times because it was very slow and melodramatic, and there wasn't enough action, especially for how they marketed it. They marketed it like it would be a 1980s action movie. You know, they didn't market it like it would be this slow drama with some action in some parts, like they advertised it to where it was just showing Jeff Bridges doing action scenes for the whole thing. And that's just not what the show is. And so for someone who was expecting that, it's pretty jarring. And I didn't I don't think she's a bad person, and I don't think she's necessarily a bad actress. I didn't like the daughter, Freckles. In fact, I think I called her Spider Freckle. And she had there were a lot of really strange lines in Season 1. And they continue to have strange lines in Season 2 as well. I think the most famous one in Season 1 was when Spider Freckle was like, "You're forcing me to chop off parts of myself that I don't even know," or something like that. Like, just really weird phrasing of how you'd say something like what she was trying to say. And I hated the ending. They had this character in the whole season named Zoe, and she was kind of like the love interest for Jeff Bridges, and I thought, where is this going to go? Because the whole season, it didn't really feel like the characters were in danger very much. It felt like they could just run around doing whatever, and it really wasn't much of a, it wasn't much of a hassle. And she just kind of disappears at the end of the season. She just goes home, and I don't even think she's going to be in Season 2, which is really bizarre, because it's like, that's something else to talk about with this season, is the way that it's been released and the timing and everything. We'll talk all about that. And finally, I think the thing that I hated the most was the big twist at the end of Season 1, which was that Spider Freckle was actually the daughter of Faraz Hamzad, the villain, and not the daughter of Jeff Bridges. I thought that was a stupid choice. I didn't like that. And basically the twist that Faraz is the old man. It was never Jeff Bridges or Harold, I guess. Dan Chase and Harold. It was Faraz. He is the old man. And if you guys are going to complain that I just spent 4 minutes talking about what I liked about Season 1 and didn't like, well, funnily enough, Season 2 opens up with a 3.5-minute prologue to remind you of everything that happened in Season 1. Yeah, like, even the show knows that you don't know what happened, because you're like, oh, what's the old man? That's on again? Oh. I will give the old man some slack, because I think that Jeff Bridges has had health problems in the past couple of years, and also they had the strike and everything, and that probably delayed the show. But other than that, like, this whole thing nowadays with, like, TV shows coming out, like, years later after the last season, and then it's hardly any episodes, like, it's, like, really, really weird. I don't like that at all. I feel like it's almost like a slap in the face, because it's like TV shows are already like low effort, like really, really low effort. And I know that that sounds like a jackass thing to say, but when you consider how much effort they used to put into making TV shows, doing 20 plus episodes a season, doing 5 or more seasons per show, having them on every year, they put a lot of effort into it. And I don't know why this whole business with like overstaying your welcome bullshit. See, I knew that that was a red flag from the very beginning, because it was never about increasing the quality of the shows. Because let's be honest, has the quality of TV increased since they've started following that overstaying your welcome bullshit? No, it's actually decreased a lot. Like, I can't even really think about, like, for this year, I think there was, like, one TV show that was good. I can't even remember what it was, though. Like, it just, TV shows nowadays, you know, they're so forgettable, they're so bland, they're so terrible, you know, there's so many reasons why they're bad, and it all started with that, you know, overstaying your welcome bullshit of, like, we can't have more than 10 episodes, we can't have a lot of seasons, and we can't make one season a year. We have to take a couple of years to make the seasons. And also, I think having these big-time movie actors in the shows really hurts as well. Because it used to be where, you know, TV shows would star TV actors, and it would be a separate thing from the movie business almost, to where, like, Andy Griffith, he would try to just do TV shows. And then he would do, like, TV movies, but he would rarely do, like, real movies. Whereas nowadays, it feels like you have these, it's just like with, you see all the time, like, the big Hollywood actors, they have problems scheduling. Like, Jenna Ortega couldn't appear in the last season of You, even though she really wanted to, because she was too busy filming movies, you know? Like, that's a problem. But anyways, I know that that's a long tangent, but I'm just sick and tired of how TV shows, how badly they've turned out. You know, I would take every single TV year leading up to 2017 maybe, or 2016. That was when they made everything about the election that whole year on TV. They made everything about Trump and the election and Hillary and all that bullshit. You know, they ruined South Park. They ruined American Horror Story. And now for the Old Man season 2, though, I really didn't know what to think about this season, because there was hardly any marketing for it. No one really talked about it except for Safi. She would see a couple of pop-up ads and be like, "Oh, Marco, the Old Man's coming on." I'd be like, "Oh, that's nice." You know, like, hardly anyone really has talked about this show, though, so far this season 2. It feels like everyone has kind of lost interest. And that's another unfortunate thing of having this huge gap in between seasons, is that all the interest goes away. And it's the same thing like where with Aaron Paul, he said that in a couple of years, people will forget about Breaking Bad. And I think, yeah, that's true, because the show ended. It had 5 seasons. You know, it didn't have anything more than that. It doesn't have anything more to offer now. You know, I'd rather focus on what's coming rather than what's already happened. Unless the older shows are better, which is, you know, that's a lot of the times the case. But still, yeah. I don't know. This video has turned into like just a general TV video, but now I will get to reviewing episode 1. You can tell how much I like the episode. Now, I won't say it was terrible. It was just a terrible premiere. Another thing that they've been doing nowadays is instead of following like the traditional TV season format of you have the premiere, and then you have the episodes in the middle, and then you have, I can't remember what term they use to describe, there's like a big climax episode, and then there's a lull before the finale, and then there's the big grand finale. They don't really follow that model anymore with TV. You know, they just treat it like a movie, or almost like it's just like a continuing thing that, you know, I mean, this episode, the way that it started, it just did not feel like a TV show's premiere. It just felt like we're continuing the story. It was so anticlimactic the way that it started, and it started off, though, to where there were a couple of good moments in the episode. My favorite moment probably was, I guess, I don't know. I didn't really have a favorite moment of this episode. I thought it had one part where it kind of resembled a TV premiere, and that was the very ending of it. They have this cliffhanger. But other than that, like, this was a very strange episode of television. You had Harold and Dan, and they were being smuggled into Afghanistan by this guy that the woman that Harold talked to, spy crap. And Harold is talking about, like, Emily, aka Spider Freckles, and about how she wanted to play sports all of a sudden when she was 9. Just like this random BS that we're starting off the show with. And then Dan, I thought, this was kind of an interesting comment that he made, because it almost felt like the writers had seen my videos. And so they were kind of responding to my complaints that they just had too much talking and bullshit like that. And so Dan was like, now's not the time for stories. And then Harold is like, but the stories are important. We have to connect the things so that we can understand Spider Freckle, so that we can understand all the different parts of Spider Freckle or something. It was really, really weird, the lines that he said in this opening bit. But then, of course, that driver gets killed, and then they have to find their own way. And this was also kind of an interesting thing about this premiere, is that it felt like Dan, aka Jeff Bridges, it felt like, you know how when you play a video game and you've beaten the whole thing, and then you come back to play it years later, kind of like what I did with Fallout New Vegas, and it just feels like, okay, we're getting back into the game that we've already beaten, and we already know where to go and what to do and everything. That's what it felt like in this episode. Like, Jeff Bridges, he automatically knew every single place to go to. It was so convenient, but so funny, too, because it was just like, wow, Afghanistan is really small. Maybe it's not too unrealistic, because he was a spy in that land. So, or agent or whatever. So, yeah. And then there's this whole thing where they meet up with this other guy, and then he turns out to be a bad guy, and they barely get out of that, but it's just like, yeah, you knew that they were going to get out. And then Harold calls his friend, his female helper. I can't remember who she was. That's another thing about this, is that in season 2, you know, even though that they're in the middle of the Middle East, they just had to have a character who talks with the main characters on the phone. Like, the people who wrote the show, they really like phone conversations. Like, I could just imagine the writers for this show They get, they call each other up in the middle of the night randomly while they're driving somewhere, and they're like, "Hey man, I was thinking about season 2. Wouldn't it be cool if Dan Chase just knew where to go in Afghanistan? Wouldn't it be cool if he could just go wherever, and then it turned out to be exactly where they needed to go?" And then they get into, like, a philosophical debate or some shit, that's what I feel like what the writers do. And then they, speaking of finding convenient places, they randomly find this cave where it's really easy to hide out there conveniently. And that's when Jeff Bridges has a nightmare about Faraz Hamzad. And then he wakes up, and I think it was him, actually, who's magically there pointing a gun at him, and he's going to kill him. And then they show, like, they have, like, an implication that there's a shot that's been fired. And that was the cliffhanger. But that was another thing where it felt kind of disingenuous, because it's like, obviously, he's going to get out of that situation. Even if he gets shot, it won't be, like, a serious wound. So, I would give the episode a C-. I would say it was a really strange way to start off season 2. The only thing that I really liked about it was the chemistry and just getting to see the acting between John Lithgow and Jeff Bridges. Like, they work really, really well together, and I think that it was kind of a smart move to put them together in this season. I mean, I think one of the things that I liked about the first season was how John Lithgow was kind of like the villain. He was kind of like forced into being a villain against Jeff Bridges, and I really like that dynamic. So if they do have a season 3, I hope that it returns to that, and I also hope that they return to the States, because honestly, I'm not sure how this whole season is going to turn out. Like, Safi was saying it looked kind of like a Wild West show, and I was like, yeah. So, I will come back to review episode 2 in a moment. I just wanted to review episode 1 really quickly so that I wasn't confusing the two episodes together. The two episodes together. And I am back for episode 2. Surprisingly, I spoke too soon about episode 1 being a bad premiere. I think actually if you watch both episodes back to back, it's better. It's way better. Episode 2, I actually really, really enjoyed. I would give episode 2 an A. There was only one thing I didn't like about it, and that was the subtitles. They were like yellow, and there were a lot of instances, and see, this is going to be another issue with this whole season. There were a lot of instances where I couldn't read some of the words in the subtitles because they were yellow letters on top of a yellow background. The desert and the sand and everything, so it was hard to read sometimes. But other than that, I really liked this episode a lot. I would say this has been one of my favorite episodes of the show so far. It was very character-driven. I thought the acting was really good, especially the acting of Spider Freckles. She had a couple of really good moments, She kind of stole the show in this episode. It was kind of all about her and what she's been dealing with Faraz. And I didn't mention, but in the first episode, Jeff Bridges was like, she's probably already dead. And it turns out, well, she was almost going to be killed. Faraz was going to kill her. And they had a really good, nice little fight scene, too, between him and her. It was actually a pretty intense little showdown. And it wasn't heavily edited or heavily choreographed. It was just a nice, old-fashioned, rough and raw fight. And I really enjoyed that part. That was probably a highlight scene of the episode for me. And yeah, and then he basically doesn't have what it takes to kill her. He thinks that he has to, because if they release her, they'll have to explain why they took her in the first place, and they don't want to have to do that. And so there's all these problems, though, that have been caused by him kidnapping Spider Freckles. Now, this is another question that I have watching it. Who's going to be the main villain of this season? Because it's pretty clear from this episode it's not going to be Faraz. So who's it going to be? Is it just going to be another unknown villain? Like another, like, unknown, like, unseen character? Because, like, in season 1, John Lithgow, he was a villain, definitely. He was like a reluctant villain. And then you had Faraz, and he was the unseen villain. And, you know, you only heard about him, and, you know, you didn't see him until the final minute of the final episode. So who's it going to be in this season who's like the main antagonist? Because so far, they're treating it like now these are 3 protagonists, and the antagonist is just unknown forces that are above Faraz. And basically, they're upset that he's not paying them, or that his money is dwindling or something, and they're putting all the pressure on him and trying to, I don't know, basically attack him and attack what he has. He has a nice little community, and he protects all these innocent women and children and people, and I guess he's a good leader. He's not the evil character that they said that he was in the first season or something, or at least not now. You know, maybe it's like he's grown into like a nicer leader or something. I don't know, but like we'll see what happens. You know, I feel a little bit like when I'm explaining this, like I'm like explaining a soap opera or something. But yeah, this episode was definitely, it might have been the best episode I've seen of the show, and that's because it wasn't trying to be like an action episode. It was trying to be an episode of this show that they've made of like a character-driven drama with a little bit of action here and there. And I enjoyed it a lot. I thought that it was definitely worth watching after all. I'm really glad that I didn't decide to just forget about watching the show. And then there's also like I don't know who she is. They don't really say, I can't remember. I don't know if they said her name or not. Faraz has this like mature female advisor, or it might be like his new love interest or something. I don't know who she is, but she's clearly like his right-hand woman, right-hand person, whatever. And I really liked her as well. I thought that she did a really good job too. So this episode was a big surprise to me. I didn't expect to enjoy it this much. And I loved how they tied everything together with episode 1. You know, by the end with the whole cave cliffhanger. They had this really interesting sequence where he's taking her to this cave. This cave must be a very special cave. And he's taking her to that cave conveniently, so that's why he has to take... It makes perfect sense. It's because now that the minister, whoever that is not going to protect Faraz anymore from the Taliban? I don't know. Or is the minister the Taliban? I don't know. Everything is so confusing in the Middle East, you know. It's just a bunch of people killing each other and trying to have power over each other. It's pretty pathetic. Kind of beta, you know, like all these fucking bad guys in the show are a bunch of betas, you know. They're like, there's this one guy, and he's the one who has the scuffle with Jeff Bridges, and he's got an eye patch now, and he's like, you shouldn't have threatened me, biatch, and I'm gonna take all of the boys here and force them to be in my army now, and now I'm gonna destroy the whole town or something. Basically, he got mad that he was getting showed up by the older female advisor, so he started to throw a temper tantrum because he's like, no, I can't handle that, a female making me look bad in front of all these guys that work with me or something. I don't know. But, like, What was like? Okay, yeah. There was this sequence where he was taking Spider Freckle to a cave to hide her and let her be there, which also I am really, really shocked that Faraz, Emily, Dan, and Harold are encountering each other this early in the show. Like, it feels very, very unexpected, so that's what I'm saying. I wonder where this season is going to go. There's 7 episodes, or there might be 8, I don't know, but, like, yeah, I'm really, really curious to see how everything plays out now, and actually, I'm looking forward to watching the show on Thursday, or on Friday morning, probably. Yeah, and then, yeah, I still haven't gone over what that sequence was. There's this sequence where he's taking her up to the cave, and he's having this conversation with her, with his back turned to her, and he's basically hallucinating her as a little girl, as I guess, like when she was like 9 or something. And so I thought that was really, really cool and interesting. And I like that whole element of the show, like bringing a couple of like kind of mid-tier, like supernatural elements like that. And then they also had like this little quote in the episode where like maybe what a ghost is a bunch of questions, or a bunch of like non-answers in the shape of a person or something. I don't know, but it was a really good quote. It could have been a funny line, but it would actually turn into a really good quote. And so, yeah, I give this episode an A, and I'm totally not making this up either. I'm being 100% honest, and I hope that people start watching it again too, because I was kind of disturbed. I looked up on IMDb, and I saw that there weren't any user reviews, which is very, very odd. I mean, even with Dark Winds, which is like a really mediocre kind of popular show. It's not really that popular. I mean, especially because they bastardized the books. But there's always like user reviews on that show, even if there's just like 5 or 10. And there weren't any for these first 2 episodes, so I would recommend to give season 2 a chance. It does feel like a different show, since it's in this completely different setting. However, it's good, and yeah, I can't wait to see what happens next. And I know that maybe it might not be a good episode. I don't know. You can never tell with this show. So, anyways, please like this video and comment and tell me what you thought of episodes 1 and 2. If you enjoyed episode 1, that's fine too. It's just, it didn't wow me. And really, I should have just held my tongue and watched the second one immediately after. But again, I didn't want to get confused. God, my voice is still... it's still so coarse from doing that voice. I wonder how long that's going to last. And then please subscribe to our channel if you'd like to see more The Old Man Reviews. Goodbye, everybody. See you soon.